Hello and welcome to Oracle Television. Here I am, my name is Carrie Kirkpatrick, I'm here with Aldo Raffa, and as he quite rightly said on a recent video that we made, this is the beginning of a new era. This is the beginning of a new era because we are a new paradigm in psychic and spiritual programming. We are here live streaming to you from our studio in Highgate in North London. We're here with you right through until midnight tonight, and this is our show called The Spirit Show. This is a mediumship special where we focus on international leading mediums, leaders in their field, people who are sought after because they have a wonderful, unique ability. They're able to tune in and bring forward messages from spirit, messages from loved ones, messages that can bring some degree of comfort, some degree of evidence that there is something more than the existence that we have on this earthly plane. And now I'd like to talk to the gentleman himself and find out a little bit more about how this amazing ability has manifested in this remarkable young man's life. Welcome, Aldo.
Hello.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about how you came to mediumship?
Well, it's been a long kind of journey, but when I was a child, when I was about sort of 3 years of age, it was just before my sister was being born. I used to call him, you know, at the time it was my guide, but I used to call it, you know, the brother, you know, that I didn't sort of have. But he told me I would have a sister. And, you know, 2 weeks later, my mum finds out she's pregnant. And yeah, so, but I said, my sister's coming and her name's going to be Francesca. And, you know, but the story kind of goes, if she had a daughter, she would call her Francesca. So it ended up being a daughter, and this connection to my brother, if you like, at the time, never really understood it. I thought it was a bit of an imaginary friend, but, you know, I used to say these things, and what do you know, these things used to sort of kind of happen. I kind of lost the connection for quite a bit, actually, at the age of about sort of 7. It kind of left. I'd sort of almost just abandoned it, if you like. And then I started really reconnecting with the guide, probably at around the age of about sort of 12, 13. So yeah, a really strange initial journey. And then I started reading cards, you know, I started working very much on a psychic level. Yeah. But of course the guide was with me all the time and working through me, sometimes unconsciously. But now, you know, from doing this work for many years now, it's almost like I've connected to stronger guides, higher guides, and the journey continues.
That is really remarkable because, you know, you're very young to be so, you know, high up in your profession. I mean, I myself started reading professionally when I was 18, but I kept pushing it to one side too.
As we do.
Yes, you do. You know, you don't necessarily choose this as a career when you're really young, but to have those experiences when you were so young, I mean, that really is remarkable, isn't it? I mean, what drew you to actually working with other kinds of formats, like sort of cards and, you know, doing readings for people? What drew you to that? Was it an obvious progression, or did somebody show you?
My aunt was, my mother was never really, she was always a bit kind of fearful of the psychic stuff. It was always like, oh no, don't talk about that, you know. My dad had a lot of experiences and is very connected to spirit, but actually it was my aunt that inspired me a lot as well, as my dad, to sort of, because she works a lot with the Reiki, she works a lot with the healing side, and I think she was probably the first person that introduced me to tarot. Yeah. And I was just so drawn to them, so drawn to tarot, and I read very intuitively for a long time. But you know, when I come to think of it, you know, every sort of house we used to live in, and I used to see spirit. You know, there was this woman that I used to call her the dancing, you know, or sort of woman on the stairs. And of course, you know, the history into that house was not so great because a woman actually did hang herself there. But I used to call her the dancing sort of woman. And I think when I found cards, that it really kind of, I thought, oh, there is something, you know, here, and it reconnected that connection.
Yeah. Did it ever used to frighten you? I mean, that you were having these experiences when you were extremely young, even though you had a sympathetic aunt that you could go and talk to, your mother wasn't so keen on it. I know what that's like. You know, I've had a mixed kind of messages from parents when I was growing up with it. But was there any point where you were frightened? I mean, you were having these experience from this guide you called your brother since you were about 2, and then you were going to houses and, you know, seeing the spirit of a lady who, you know, killed herself, unfortunately. Did it scare you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. When you're going through it by yourself, it can be a bit of a lonely, mad kind of path. And I think that's kind of how I went with it. It was kind of lonely, then it was mad, and then it got madder because you'd think, well, that was a random dream. And the next thing you know, something in that dream is just so relevant to an exact occurrence. And it can be a bit sort of, and for a long time I was very skeptical. You know, even when I came into doing this work with people, I used to kind of call myself the skeptical sort of psychic. Yeah.
Well, I totally relate to that, because I feel that when we are involved in a world which at times can be so sort of amazingly wild and way out, and we get used to it, with the fact that we're picking up stuff for people, we get used to the fact that we're doing cosmic ordering and little ceremonies and stuff is happening, you know, it just becomes normal, part of our language, you know. So I always feel there is an importance, like the intellectual brain needs to be going, now come on, hang on a minute, was that really a sign, or was it just like nothing? You know, I don't ever want to be one of those people that's just too fluffy, that's trying to read into everything without actually questioning. But don't you feel it's two opposite sides of the brain, the kind of skeptical questioning and the intuitive understanding?
Absolutely. And you know, if you don't mind, I want to share a story. Actually, you've just reminded me of we worked together, didn't we? It was a Halloween fair last year, October time. And this guy, he comes, sits down, and I thought he was the first.
Was that the Psychic Gold event?
Yeah, Psychic Gold event. That's
which are great events, by the way. Quick plug for Psychic Gold events. They are going to have another one up at Halloween time. Very good down in Kent. Yeah.
That's it. And well, thank you for reminding me. My brain was just a bit. But yeah, the first guy that came for a reading, he sat down, and you know, my analytical brain's going. You know, he doesn't look like the sort of person who could go for a reading. You know, and you almost now I find I've learned to sort of listen to it, but not buy into that. Yeah. Because it will chat. It will talk about what it thinks it knows. And the first thing that Spirit gave me was a particular date. And it got even worse, Kerry, because then he said to me, "That's a really bad day." And of course,
dear.
I know, and of course, my analytical mind's getting even more wound up now. Oh, you've really upset him. How are you going to get yourself out of that? What have you done? And you just got to let that mind. You almost like leave it behind, send it to a nice place, and just let that guidance come in. But it was a very touching message. It was actually the date that come through, and then obviously went into reading it. It was his son, and it was actually his son's funeral. It's amazing when that analytical mind, you know, kicks in.
Now, you've raised a really interesting point there, Aldo. When mediumship comes through in a reading, I understand that validation is really, you know, what mediumship is all about. I'm psychic, I have some mediumistic abilities, but I don't go out as a medium because it's random and I'm psychic tuning into the person. But for me, true mediumship is about validations. It's about getting dates, names sometimes, how that person passed over to spirit, some information that only the relative will know, that this is all validation, confirmation that you've got a genuine connection. Now, that story you just told us about what happened at the Psychic Gold event, initially you'd think, oh my goodness, that's like really heavy emotionally. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. But the thing is, it's there for a reason, isn't it? You know, it's come forward for that person because that son wanted to bring through a message of love. You know, how did he feel after that reading?
Very, very empowered, actually, because he knew, I mean, we both knew, because it wasn't me, do you know what I mean? We both knew he was there, you know, that we felt it. The presence after that came through, and then obviously my intellectual mind finally just gave in, because it was having a little battle at the beginning. It just flew right through, and we were, well, it was a channel, and I don't necessarily find you do a lot in mediumship other than channel, and it's a bit of a trick for the analytical, because it's like, well, what are you doing? But you are opening that crown and letting it, the spirit literally work through you.
So you talk about opening up the crown chakra for mediumship. You know, what kind of preparation do you do, like sort of before you come and do mediumship on a show, before you do platform demonstration, as we did last week in central London? Is there a special kind of ritual or sequence of events that you follow to get yourself in the right space?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. First and foremost, and I know it might sound a bit silly, but I do always say this to myself. I say it to myself, I say, I visualize the white light coming in, and I say to myself mentally, lighten up, you know, and remember, you can't do this. Spirit will, you know, work through this. So that's the kind of prep for the getting me out of my mind. Then I call in the guide, you know, I call in, and my guide, I've not been working with, this is a new guide that's come through, and he's like a Sufi, is it?
Sufi,
Sufi, and he comes through, and he has this, it's like a kind of chime bell. So he comes through and he'll calm the energy. And I know it sounds a bit crazy, but he'll just calm my energy down. And then what I'll do is let him connect me to whatever.
Wow. Wow. Now, I do have some good news for you, Aldo. We had a bit of a last minute change of plan, as all of our Facebook friends would know. The guest that we were hoping to have come in to join us on the show today to have a reading wasn't able to make it at the last minute. And it was touch and go whether we were going to find somebody else. But we have. We have, because we have the most amazing neighbour called Di across the road who has brought in the wonderful Tracy. And they're sitting quietly, very patiently in the studio. And we are going to go to a section of the show where I'll step out and it can be just you and Tracy. It may be the second section or the third section, we're not quite sure yet, but we are going to be doing that. Now, in the meantime, I'd just like to let you know also how you can get involved with the show. This is an interactive show, it is live, but it's not like any other interactive show that you've seen before on the Sky channels. First of all, we do not have the same Ofcom guidelines governing us, and therefore we are able to speak a bit more freely about these subjects such as mediumship. However, we do also still have our own ethical practice, and we're not going to answer some kind of like way out there questions along lines of things like, when am I going to die? Can you tell me the lottery numbers? Can you put a spell on somebody for me? Etc, etc. We reserve the right at any time to go, sorry, actually we're not going to do that, because we do have ethical practice and we do kind of police our own practice within this industry. However, you can have free readings on this show by sending a message through. We've had quite a few messages coming through already through our email account on our website, which is oracletelevision.com, but you can also post a message on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/oracletelevision. Please like our page first, post your question there, and we will be selecting some questions as we go through the evening. We also have our Twitter feed, and you can put a question there as well. So it's at Psychic Oracle. Again, put your question for Aldo there, and we will be selecting some questions throughout the evening and giving you some readings on air. They're not going to be just like 60 seconds like you may have seen on Sky where everything's against the clock. We'll go with as long as the flow. Really, we're going with the flow tonight, aren't we?
We are indeed.
You know, now, what's your feeling? I'm still trying to intuit whether we bring Tracy on in about 10 minutes' time or whether we wait for half an hour. I know she's very keen to come forward and see, you know, what's going to come through for her. But what's your feeling about the way this evening is going to blossom and the flow of this evening? Because it's a new moon, it's a new show, it's a new era in spiritual and psychic programming. And I feel that we're getting some really lovely kind of messages getting lined up. I can feel them almost lining up in a kind of a virtual kind of way behind you. What's your feeling on this?
Well, you must be psychic, Kelly, because you've taken the words out of my mouth. Before you just said that, I was just getting a feel for the energy, and I was feeling so much happening, and I was just kind of opening up the crown there, letting you know the energies flow. But I think it's going to be a really, really kind of. The nature of this evening, I think we're going to really shed some light into some situations for people, and I think we're going to really open up a lot of people's eyes this evening. We are also going to talk to you about ways that you can start to open up and develop psychically as well, because it can be a little bit nerve-wracking, it can be a bit daunting, it can be a little bit scary at times, especially if you're on your own, you don't have much family support, maybe all these things are suddenly starting to happen to you, as is often the case when we were much younger. Things suddenly kick in very strongly, and it's a bit weird. For my own part,
I had situations unfolding in my life when I was 17 that kind of pretty much looked like they would have come out of a horror film. How I managed to get through it, I don't know, but all I can do is remember a 17-year-old sort of having all sorts of weird things, some negative things happening, and being still quite nervous about it, but that's because I don't know what I know now. Now, if people had been around to help me, to guide me, you know, to take me into a development circle, to give me a one-to-one reading which could help me to develop and see the way forward, that would not have been a scary experience. And you also had similar situations. So what we're going to do throughout the evening is that we can answer these questions that are coming through via Facebook, Twitter and our email. Those will be individual to you. Feel free to ask about development, feel free to ask about messages from Spirit. This Spirit Show is live and interactive, featuring international psychic mediums. To book an appointment with one of our studio guests, call 0207 193 6457 or call 0207 111 6378 to have a reading right now with one of our team. Oracle TV, for mind, body and soul.